Admiral Jack Reynolds was halfway through his third cup of coffee and second blueberry muffin when the aliens decided to make contact. The military-grade communication device on his kitchen counter, disguised as an innocent toaster for the benefit of dinner guests, erupted with a series of lights and beeps that Reynolds had only ever heard during training simulations. "For the love of Reynolds," muttered, setting down his coffee mug hard enough to splash the contents onto his bathrobe. "It's Saturday. Whatever apocalypse this is, it could have waited until Monday." He jabbed at the device with Muffin's sticky fingers, and a holographic display materialized above his breakfast table, scattering light across his half-eaten meal. The alien that appeared in the projection looked like what might happen if an octopus and a praying mantis had a baby that then decided to wear armor reminiscent of a medieval knight who'd raided a neon dance club. Its mandibles clicked in what Reynolds assumed was a sign of aggression, though it could just as easily have been indigestion. "People of Earth," the creature began, its voice translated into English with a peculiar Australian accent that Reynolds found oddly disarming. "I am Fleet Commander Dres of the Kra'Thul Dominion, master of 17 star systems and conqueror of the Pleiades cluster." Reynolds raised an eyebrow. "Congratulations? Your primitive planet has been selected for immediate annexation into our glorious empire," Commander Dres continued, oblivious to Reynolds' interruption. "You have precisely 48 of your Earth hours to surrender unconditionally, dismantle your militaries, and prepare for the benevolent rule of the Kra'Thul Dominion." Reynolds took another bite of his muffin, chewing thoughtfully as the alien delivered what was clearly a well-rehearsed speech. "Failure to comply will result in the complete and total annihilation of your species. Our warships have already entered your solar system and are positioned for a swift conquest." Reynolds mumbled, reaching for his secure phone. "And I suppose you've got a bridge to sell me on Mars too?" "Your primitive attempts at resistance would be amusing." Dres's mandibles clicked again, but ultimately futile. "We await your surrender. You have 48 hours. The projection vanished, leaving Reynolds staring at the space where it had been, blueberry muffin suspended halfway to his mouth. "Well," he said to the empty kitchen, "that's one way to ruin a weekend." Exactly 17 minutes later, the United Nations Security Council chamber was in an uproar. Representatives from 15 nations shouted over one another in at least 12 languages, while translators struggled to keep pace. The emergency session had been convened with unprecedented speed, breaking several diplomatic protocols and at least one land speed record as diplomats rushed to the New York headquarters. Secretary General Amara Ozai stood at the podium, repeatedly striking her gavel against the sound block with enough force to make the delegates nearest to her flinch. "Order. I will have order in this chamber," she shouted, her normally composed demeanor fractured by the gravity of the situation. The doors at the back of the chamber swung open, and Admiral Reynolds strode in, now properly attired in his full military dress uniform, though a small spot of dried blueberry still clung stubbornly to his left cuff. "Admiral Reynolds," Secretary General Ozai acknowledged with visible relief. "Perhaps you can explain to this council exactly what is happening." Reynolds stepped to the central podium, surveying the room. For the first time in UN history, representatives from Russia, China, and the United States sat shoulder to shoulder without a hint of their usual animosity. Nothing like an alien threat to foster international cooperation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reynolds began, his voice cutting through the lingering murmurs. "Approximately 1 hour ago, Earth received a formal ultimatum from an alien civilization calling themselves the Kra'Thul Dominion. They have given us 48 hours to surrender our planet or face total annihilation." The chamber, improbably, grew even quieter. "Their warships have already entered our solar system," Reynolds continued, "and based on our preliminary scans, their technological capabilities appear to be—" He paused, searching for a diplomatic term, "significantly advanced compared to our own." "So we're doomed," said the French representative, never one to mince words. "What possible response could we have to such a threat?" A thin smile spread across Reynolds' face, the kind of smile that had made more than one enemy nation reconsider their position during earthly conflicts. "On the contrary," he said, "I believe we finally have the perfect opportunity to unveil Project Last Laugh." "Project Last Laugh?" repeated Secretary General Ozai, her brow furrowed. "I've headed the United Nations for 7 years, and I've never heard of any such project." "That was rather the point, Madam Secretary," Reynolds said with a wink that did nothing to ease the tension in the room. "If I may." Reynolds gestured toward the chamber doors, which swung open once more. A woman strode in, her lab coat fluttering behind her like a superhero cape. Her curly hair was pulled back in a messy bun, with what appeared to be a pencil and possibly a screwdriver holding it in place. She carried a tablet in one hand and what looked suspiciously like a half-eaten energy bar in the other. "Allow me to introduce Dr. Ellie Morgan, Chief Science Officer of the Global Defense Initiative." "Paul." "The what initiative?" sputtered the British representative, nearly spilling his tea. Dr. Morgan approached the podium with the confident gait of someone who had better things to do but was making time for this particular apocalypse. "Hello, everyone," she said cheerfully, as though addressing a kindergarten class rather than the world's most powerful political body. "Lovely to finally meet you all. I've been working underground for the past 15 years, quite literally. Our main facility is beneath Wyoming. Nice place, Wyoming. Very few questions asked when strange equipment is delivered." Reynolds cleared his throat. "Dr. Morgan, perhaps we could focus on the alien armada currently approaching Earth." Right, Morgan nodded, tapping her tablet. The chamber's screens lit up with schematics of spacecraft and weapons systems that looked decidedly non-terrestrial in origin. Project Last Laugh was initiated after the Roswell incident back in '47. Turns out that wasn't just a weather balloon after all. Who knew? Murmurs rippled through the chamber as Morgan continued. "Since then, we've been quietly reverse engineering alien technology, preparing for the day when the cosmic neighborhood would come knocking. And not in a borrow a cup of sugar way, but more in a we're here to conquer your planet way, which, as it happens, is today." "You're telling us," the Russian representative said slowly, "that a secret international organization has been developing advanced alien technology for decades, without the knowledge or approval of the United Nations." "Well, when you put it like that, it sounds nefarious," Morgan shrugged. "We prefer to think of it as a surprise birthday party for the aliens. Except instead of cake, we have kinetic energy weapons and quantum displacement shields." The Chinese representative stood up. "And why were our nations not informed of this preparation?" Reynolds stepped forward. "Because, Ambassador, politicians talk a lot. No offense intended, but global security required absolute secrecy. Project Last Laugh operates under a special mandate, established by a coalition of world leaders following several undisclosed extraterrestrial encounters throughout the 20th century. So what exactly do we have to defend ourselves?" asked the German representative, cutting to the chase with characteristic efficiency. Morgan's face lit up like a child on Christmas morning. "All sorts of goodies. We've got a fleet of spacecraft hidden in an underground base in Antarctica. We've got energy shields that can protect major population centers. We've got weapons that can disrupt their navigation systems. And we've got this." She held up what looked like an ordinary pen, which does absolutely nothing to aliens but is a really nice pen. It's underwater. "I just wanted to show it off." Reynolds gently moved Morgan aside. "What Dr. Morgan is trying to say is that we're not as defenseless as the Kra'Thul believe. In fact, we've been monitoring their civilization for decades. We know their strengths, their weaknesses, and most importantly, their expectations of us. They think they're dealing with a primitive species that will either surrender or mount a pathetic defense." A slow smile spread across Reynolds' face. "They have no idea what they're in for." The Security Council chamber had transformed from a room of panicked diplomats to a makeshift war room in under an hour. Holographic displays showed the positions of the Kra'Thul fleet, while Dr. Morgan flicked through schematics of Earth's secret defenses with the casual ease of someone scrolling through vacation photos. "So we have the weapons," said the Indian representative, leaning forward. "But do we have a strategy?" As if on cue, the chamber doors opened once more, and a man with salt and pepper hair and the purposeful stride of someone who had never been late to anything in his life entered. He wore civilian clothes, but his military bearing was unmistakable. Marcus Diaz, Reynolds announced. Former Special Forces, now our head of strategic operations for extraterrestrial encounters. Diaz nodded curtly to the room. Ladies and gentlemen, we have approximately 46 hours to make the Kra'Thul regret ever entering our solar system. His voice carried the cool confidence of someone who had faced impossible odds before and found them to be exaggerated. Our intelligence suggests that the Kra'Thul operate on a strictly hierarchical structure. They expect the same from us. They believe they're dealing with a fragmented planet that will crumble under pressure. Diaz tapped the display, zooming in on what appeared to be the alien flagship. Their technology is advanced, but predictable, and predictability, he smiled thinly, is a weakness we can exploit. How exactly do we exploit advanced alien technology with our comparatively primitive capabilities? Asked the Japanese representative. Dr. Morgan snorted. Primitive? Please, we've had their propulsion technology since the 80s. We just didn't use it because, well, fossil fuel executives are really excellent lobbyists. Our plan, Diaz continued, ignoring Morgan's commentary, is threefold. First, we deploy our hidden fleet to engage their outer ships, demonstrating capabilities they don't expect. Second, while they're processing that surprise, we infiltrate their flagship. And third, he paused for effect, we give them an ultimatum of our own. Infiltrate their flagship? The French representative laughed incredulously. And how do you propose we do that? A new voice entered the conversation, smooth and confident, by giving them exactly what they expect, until we don't. All eyes turned to a tall woman standing by the entrance. She wore a tailored suit and carried herself with diplomatic poise. Ambassador Nura Okafor, Reynolds introduced her, our leading expert in xenopsychology. The Kra'Thul expect us to send representatives to beg for mercy, Okafor explained, walking to the center of the room. So we'll send them exactly that, a delegation apparently coming to negotiate surrender terms. Except our delegation will be carrying more than just white flags. A Trojan horse, murmured the Greek representative, appreciating the historical parallel. Exactly, Okafor nodded. The Kra'Thul pride themselves on psychological warfare. Their ultimatum was designed to terrify us into submission, but they've never encountered humans before. Her smile turned predatory. They have no idea how we respond to bullies. So who will be this delegation? Asked Secretary General Osai. I'll lead it, Reynolds said immediately, along with Dr. Morgan, Diaz, and Ambassador Okafor. The four of you against an alien armada. The Russian representative shook his head. This sounds like the beginning of a bad joke. Or a great one, Morgan interjected, hence the project name. Last laugh. Reynolds addressed the council with renewed gravity. While we're implementing Operation Pushback, we need Earth's militaries ready to deploy our reverse-engineered defenses. Every nation must appear to be preparing for surrender while actually preparing for battle. Diaz pulled up a detailed timeline on the main display. We have the element of surprise. We have technology they don't know we possess. And most importantly, he looked around the room, we have the one thing the Kra'Thul can't understand, human ingenuity, when backed into a corner. The chamber fell silent as the reality of the plan sank in. Well, Secretary General Osei finally said, it appears we have our course of action. May whatever gods might be watching over us have a good sense of humor. Reynolds grinned. Trust me, Madam Secretary, when this is over, even the aliens will appreciate the punchline. Exactly 36 hours after the Kra'Thul ultimatum, Admiral Reynolds stood in the command center of the USS Surprise Party, Earth's flagship vessel that had, until yesterday, been hidden beneath 2 miles of Antarctic ice. The ship hummed with energy as its systems came fully online for the first time outside of simulations. You know, Dr. Morgan said, adjusting settings on a control panel, I always thought our first official space battle would be with the Russians or the Chinese. Maybe even the Canadians. They're suspiciously polite. Reynolds ignored her. Status report, Commander. The ship's tactical officer, a stoic woman named Commander Rodriguez, looked up from her station. Fleet is in position, Admiral. All ships report ready. The Kra'Thul remain unaware of our deployment. Of course they do, Morgan interjected. We're using their own stealth technology against them. It's like trying to hear a whisper while you're shouting. On the main view screen, the Kra'Thul fleet hung against the backdrop of space, 7 massive warships arranged in a formation that screamed military precision and overwhelming confidence. They're so dramatic, Ambassador Okafor observed. Those ships are deliberately positioned to be visible from Earth's major observatories. It's psychological warfare 101. It's time to change the psychology, Diaz said, his fingers dancing across a tactical display. Pushback commences in 3, 2, 1. The first phase of Earth's counterattack happened in silence. No explosions, no dramatic weapon fire, just the sudden activation of quantum displacement fields around major cities worldwide. From space, it would appear as though substantial portions of Earth's infrastructure simply vanished. Displacement fields active, Rodriguez reported. Ground teams confirmed successful deployment. All major population centers now invisible to Kra'Thul scanners. They'll be confused, Diaz noted with satisfaction. Their intelligence suggested we had no such technology. Reynolds nodded. And confusion leads to hesitation. They launched the counter fleet. From hidden bases around Earth's orbit, 3 dozen ships, smaller than the Kra'Thul vessels, but gleaming with retrofitted alien technology, accelerated toward the invading armada. On the Kra'Thul command ship, alarms would be blaring. Reynolds could almost picture the confusion on their alien faces, as much as creatures with mandibles could express confusion. Our delegation shuttle is ready for launch, Rodriguez reported. Infiltration team standing by. Reynolds straightened his uniform. Time for Phase 2. Dr. Morgan, Ambassador Okafor. Diaz, with me. The delegation shuttle was small, unassuming, and packed with enough concealed technology to make any spy agency weep with envy. As the 4 humans boarded, Morgan patted the wall affectionately. I modified this baby myself, she said proudly. It broadcasts all the signatures of a harmless diplomatic vessel, while carrying enough surprises to ruin their entire day. Remember, Okafor cautioned as they strapped in, I'll do the talking initially. The Kra'Thul respect hierarchy. They'll expect humans to send their most silver-tongued representative to beg for mercy. And instead, Reynolds said with a grim smile, they get the 4 of us bearing gifts they definitely don't want. The shuttle launched, accelerating toward the massive Kra'Thul flagship. Behind them, Earth's counter-fleet engaged the outer ships of the alien armada, not attacking directly, but demonstrating capabilities that, according to the Kra'Thul intelligence, humans should not possess. They're hailing us, Diaz reported from the shuttle's communication station. Right on cue. Okafor nodded, composing her expression into one of diplomatic deference. They open a channel. The view screen flickered to life, revealing Commander Drez's mantis-like face. His mandibles clicked in what Reynolds was now certain was the Kra'Thul equivalent of smugness. Ah, the humans send their surrender delegation, Drez's translated voice purred. How predictable. You are cleared to dock in Bay 7. Come unarmed and prepared to discuss the terms of your species' submission. We look forward to the discussion, Commander, Okafor replied with perfect diplomatic poise, betrayed only by the dangerous glint in her eyes that the translation software wouldn't convey. As the communication ended, Reynolds turned to his team. Faces everyone. It's showtime. Morgan patted a concealed compartment containing devices that were very definitely not surrender documents. I can't wait to see their faces when they realize what's happening. That's assuming they have faces as we understand them, Diaz remarked dryly. Details, Morgan waved dismissively as their shuttle approached the enormous docking bay of the Kra'Thul flagship. The point is, they're about to have a very bad day. The interior of the Kra'Thul flagship resembled what might happen if H.R. Giger designed a shopping mall during a neon shortage. Curved, organic corridors pulsed with bioluminescent light, while what appeared to be living technology merged seamlessly with mechanical components. Fascinating, Morgan whispered, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding the gravity of their mission. Their tech is actually semi-organic. I'd love to take some of this apart. Focus, Doctor, Reynolds murmured as they were escorted by 4 Kra'Thul guards. Each alien stood nearly 7 feet tall, their armored exoskeletons gleaming under the pulsing lights. Supreme Commander Vortuk awaits, announced the lead guard, its translated voice sounding oddly like a GPS navigation system with attitude. You will show proper deference or be disintegrated where you stand. Charming hospitality, Diaz commented under his breath. The delegation was led into a vast chamber that could only be described as a throne room. Seated on an elevated platform was the largest Kra'Thul they had seen yet, its exoskeleton adorned with what appeared to be medals, trophies, or possibly the preserved appendages of conquered species. No one was eager to look too closely. Supreme Commander Vortuk, Ambassador Okafor stepped forward, bowing with practiced diplomatic precision. We come representing Earth to discuss the terms proposed in your generous ultimatum. Vortuk's mandibles clicked rapidly in what the humans were beginning to recognize as laughter. There are no terms to discuss, Earth creatures, only the details of your surrender and subsequent servitude. About that, Reynolds said, stepping forward, we've had some internal discussions, and we'd like to propose a counteroffer. The Supreme Commander's compound eyes seemed to narrow, if that was anatomically possible. Counteroffer. You misunderstand your position, human. This is not a negotiation. Oh, but it is. Reynolds smiled pleasantly. You see, while we've been having this lovely chat, your fleet has discovered something rather inconvenient. Earth isn't quite as defenseless as your intelligence suggested. As if on cue, the chamber's massive view screen activated, showing the ongoing space battle. The Kra'Thul ships were clearly in disarray, their perfect formation broken as Earth's vessels executed maneuvers that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Impossible. Vortuk rose from his throne, mandibles clicking furiously. Your species does not possess such technology. Yeah, about that, Morgan chimed in. Turns out we're pretty good at reverse engineering. Those ships you lost in what you thought were crashes over the last century, we've been taking them apart and putting them back together with a few human improvements. Vortuk turned to his subordinates. Erikse, Ogoth, Wazen, you, into book. This is a deception. Activate the primary weapons array. Target their largest population centers. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Diaz said calmly, holding up what looked like an ordinary smartphone. We've already uploaded a rather nasty virus into your systems, the courtesy of a teenager from Seoul who won our global hack and alien competition last year. Brilliant kid. Terrible taste in music. The truth, Supreme Commander, Okafor continued smoothly, is that Earth has been aware of the Kra'Thul Dominion for decades. We've been studying you, learning your weaknesses, preparing for this exact scenario. While you were watching us, Reynolds added, we were watching you right back. Vortuk sank back onto his throne, his enormous form suddenly less imposing. What is it you want, humans? Reynolds stepped forward, fixing the alien leader with a stare that had made admirals from Earth's most powerful nations reconsider their life choices. We want you to take your fleet and leave our solar system. We want you to spread the word throughout the galaxy that Earth is not a target for conquest. And, most importantly, he paused, allowing himself a small smile. We want you to understand that humanity has been waiting, hoping, even, for someone to push us this far. Explain, demanded Vortuk. Humans are at their best when they have a common enemy, Reynolds said. We fight amongst ourselves constantly. But the moment an outside threat appears, we become something else entirely. Something united. Something dangerous. Consider this, Ambassador Okafor added. Your species has conquered 17 systems. Impressive. But ask yourself how many of those species had spent their entire existence perfecting the art of war against themselves. Morgan stepped forward, unable to contain herself any longer. We're not just united against you. We're actually kind of grateful. Nothing brings humans together like an alien invasion. It's practically a cultural cliché at this point. Fortuk's compound eyes shifted between the four humans, the gravity of the situation finally sinking in. You were waiting for us? Not you specifically, Reynolds clarified with a shrug, but someone like you. Absolutely. 3 days after what Earth's media had dubbed the pushback incident, the Kra'Thul fleet retreated to the edge of the solar system. They hadn't left entirely, that would be too much like admitting defeat, but they had established a respectful distance that suggested reconsideration of their conquest strategy. Admiral Reynolds stood at the window of the newly established Extraterrestrial Relations Office, formerly the janitor's closet at UN headquarters. Budget allocations for space defense were still catching up with recent events. So they're just hovering there? Secretary General Ozai asked, peering through a telescope pointed out the window, despite the fact that the Kra'Thul ships were far beyond visual range from Earth. Observing, Reynolds confirmed. Reassessing, probably writing extremely awkward reports to their superiors about how they were outmaneuvered by a supposedly primitive species. Dr. Morgan burst into the room, clutching a tablet and vibrating with excitement. They've responded to our communication request, and you'll never believe what they're offering. Unconditional surrender, Diaz suggested dryly, looking up from a stack of reports. Better, Morgan grinned. They want to trade technology. Seems we impressed them with our innovative adaptations of their systems. Apparently our viral countermeasures were particularly elegantly destructive. Their words, not mine, though I'm putting that on my business cards. Ambassador Okafor entered, just in time to catch Morgan's announcement. Trade rather than conquest. It's a significant shift in their approach. My team has been analyzing their communication patterns. Their entire hierarchy is in disarray. We've essentially forced a cultural revolution within their ranks. And not just the Kra'Thul, Reynolds added, bringing up a holographic display showing multiple signals approaching from various sectors of space. Word has spread. We're receiving transmissions from at least 7 other spacefaring civilizations, some offering alliances, others simply expressing curiosity about the species that sent the Kra'Thul running. So we're famous now, Diaz remarked, leaning back in his chair. Great. Intergalactic celebrity status, just what we need. It's exactly what we need, Okafor corrected him. Reputation is everything in diplomacy, whether on Earth or across the stars. The Kra'Thul did us a favor. They announced our presence to the galactic community in the most dramatic way possible. Secretary General Ozai looked overwhelmed. How do we even begin to handle this? We've barely managed peace on our own planet. With surprising ease, actually, Reynolds said. Nothing unites humans like the realization that we're not alone in the universe, and that the universe isn't particularly friendly. Speaking of unity, Morgan interjected, you might want to see this. She switched the holographic display to a live feed from the General Assembly Hall, where representatives from nearly every nation on Earth were voting unanimously to establish a unified Earth Defense Force. Well, Ozai murmured, that's unprecedented, and probably temporary, Diaz noted pragmatically, but it's a start. 1 month later, Admiral Reynolds found himself in the improbable position of hosting a diplomatic reception for representatives from 3 alien civilizations, all of whom had arrived to establish formal relations with Earth. The event was being held in the same UN Security Council chamber where the crisis had begun. To think, Ambassador Okafor said, sidling up beside him with a glass of champagne. A month ago we were preparing for annihilation. Now we're trading star charts and negotiating mining rights in the asteroid belt. Reynolds nodded, watching as Dr. Morgan enthusiastically explained the concept of a high five to a bemused gelatinous entity from Proxima Centauri. The universe has no idea what they've unleashed by introducing themselves to us, Reynolds said with a smile. Humanity was divisive and chaotic when we only had each other to deal with. Now that we have external perspectives, we're still divisive and chaotic, Diaz interrupted, joining them. We're just collectively divisive and chaotic. From across the room, a commotion erupted as Morgan apparently convinced the gelatinous alien to attempt a wave, but causing ripples through its translucent body that delighted the assembled diplomats. You know, Reynolds said, watching the scene with amusement, when the Kra'Thul delivered their ultimatum, I never imagined this would be the outcome. Really? Okafor raised an eyebrow. I did. Humanity has always defined itself through adversity. The greater the threat, the more remarkable our response. To the Kra'Thul, Diaz raised his glass in a mock toast, for finally giving us the push we needed. To humanity, Reynolds countered, raising his own glass, for being exactly who we've always been. The species you really shouldn't underestimate. As if on cue, the gelatinous alien attempted a joke in its newly learned English, sending the entire assembly into fits of laughter that transcended species and star systems alike. Earth, it seemed, was going to fit right into the galactic community, whether the galaxy was ready for it or not.